You're listening to the Telltale Channel. In this podcast, if you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to check out my Patreon. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Andrew Tate tweets, new TV show. We get modern Western patriots to sit and watch Hitler's translated speeches and try to find a single thing they disagree with. So I thought to myself, you know what? Why not? Let's do that. I got an AI transcribed Hitler speech that I want to sit through and listen to. Just for the record, though, Andrew Tate is not saying that the right is as bad as Hitler. He's saying Hitler isn't that bad. So keep that in mind as we go through. All right, let's give this speech a listen. This is on January 30th, 1939. I believe this is just before he invaded Poland. Yeah, so he invaded September 1st, 1939, and that's kind of the moment that the Second World War was officially kicked off, if you will. That's kind of how they view it. So this is about 8 months before that. The justification that was given for invading Poland in the first place was that Germans were being persecuted by the Polish. It wasn't true at all. But Himmler specifically was creating the circumstances to justify it by finding a couple of cases of a person getting a broken arm because they were pushed down or something, and just blowing it up out of proportion and claiming that this is one example of 10,000 Germans are being so mistreated all over the place, when it was really not, they weren't. So anyway, that was their justification to go into Poland to save Germans from persecution. And Hitler, at this point, he had started the whole gas chamber thing. He had started the death camps, and the concentration camps already existed by now. So listen to what he has to say here.
In connection with the Jewish question, I have this to say. It is a shameful spectacle to see how the whole democratic world is oozing sympathy for the poor, tormented Jewish people, but remains hard-hearted and obdurate when it comes to helping them, which is surely, in view of its attitude, an obvious duty. The arguments that are brought up as an excuse for not helping them actually speak for us Germans and Italians.
So he was basically pushing Jews out of the country. There was a moment in time when he stopped pushing them out, and he locked the doors and started sending them to concentration camps and death camps rather than trying to get them out of Germany. I'm not sure when he actually locked the doors. Let me find. When did Hitler stop allowing Jews out of Germany? 1937 to 1938, I believe, is roughly when things started, when he locked the doors. I don't remember what the year was exactly, but it was around this time. Anyway, a lot of people don't like immigration. And that's what this whole thing was about fundamentally. It was an immigration problem. The Jewish question could be better stated as the immigrant problem. The Jewish question, the immigrant problem. It's the exact same thing that's happening today. Literally identical. All of the neighboring countries, they didn't want refugees to put a strain on their economies, so they kept rejecting the Jews.
For this is what they say. 1, we, that is the democracies, are not in a position to take in the Jews. Yet in these empires there are not 10 people to the square kilometer, while Germany, with her 135 inhabitants to the square kilometer, is supposed to have room for them. 2, they assure us we cannot take them unless Germany is prepared to allow them a certain amount of capital to bring with them as immigrants.
So Germany wanted immigrants out of Germany. They just wanted to deport the immigrants. That's what it was about. And the neighboring countries were complaining about the fact that Hitler was mistreating them and trying to push them out of the country. And when they tried to leave, Germany confiscated a lot of the assets that they tried to leave with. So the Zionists of the time made a deal with Hitler 1933, August 10th, I think, 1933, they made a deal with Hitler, which allowed Jews to escape Germany with most of their assets if they were going to Palestine. But they confiscated it pretty much in every other scenario. So these countries are saying, let them come with their money. Don't take their money. That was the complaint.
For hundreds of years, Germany was good enough to receive these elements, although they possessed nothing except infectious political and physical diseases.
Does this sound familiar? Poisoning the blood of the country, literal quote from Donald Trump. I'm sorry, man. I'm going to have to pull this one up. I'm telling you guys, this is identical what's happening in the United States right now. Identical to what happened in Germany from 1933 to 1935. I can put it down to a day. Like March 10th, 1933 is perfectly analogous to February 19th, 2025, roughly. You know, the Enabling Act passed by Hitler. Trump says that he and the Attorney General are the only ones that can interpret the law. He starts pushing out executive orders like mad. Hitler says Jews are, what was it?
Except infectious political and physical diseases.
They're spreading political and physical diseases.
No control whatsoever. Nobody has any idea where these people are coming from. And we know they...
Talking about immigrants. Yes, we do, but okay.
We know they come from prisons. We know they come from mental institutions, insane asylums. We know they're terrorists. Nobody has ever seen anything like we're witnessing right now. It is a very sad thing for our country. It's poisoning the blood of our country.
Literal words from Hitler's lips. He's quoting Hitler when he says that. I'm telling you guys that it's identical what's happening right now. And remember why we're doing this. Andrew Tate aptly recognizes that Republicans in the United States are spitting images, or the party is a spitting image of the Nazi Party. You know, I'm going to talk about this in a little while, but let me just show you guys something. In 50 years, if we're lucky, we are going to look back at this time as the horror show that it really was. If we're lucky, we'll look back at this time the way that we look back at Germany today, like from 80 years ago or whatever. And the faces that we see in Germany in the 1930s are faces like this. There was a cameraman that was taking pictures for the Germans or whatever. And there was a moment when Joseph Goebbels was having his picture taken and found out that the cameraman was Jewish. This is the picture of the moment Goebbels found out the dude was Jewish. That is a dark look on his face. An evil human being. A soulless, empty monster. We can look at that today and recognize that fact about him. In 50 years, if we're lucky, we will look at this picture right here and recognize the same thing about him. This is Tom Homan, the head of ICE, the deportation organization or whatever. Listen to what he said at CPAC.
I'm not going to be satisfied until every criminal alien gang member, every criminal alien, every Trenda Awa is eradicated from this country and send their ass to Gitmo where they belong.
Talking about immigrants, he wants to, quote unquote, eradicate immigrants from this country. He wants to eradicate immigrants. If we're lucky, we will see him the same way we see this picture. The guy enjoys hurting others.
Damn, I love my job.
He's tearing families apart. He's destroying people's lives needlessly. They're not just criminals. He's not just arresting criminals. He's not just arresting undocumented immigrants. He's arresting people who are here legally, requesting asylum status, or having been brought here as a child means you are legally documented in the United States. And he's taking even those people out. Everybody that has any kind of anything at all, any connection to immigration in any way, shape, or form, he's taking them out and sending them to a literal concentration camp, Guantanamo Bay. I'm going to talk about that at more length in a little while, but I hope that we can all recognize what's happening here and recognize Tom Homan as the truly, deeply evil human being that he is.
What they possess today, they have by a very large extent gained at the cost of the less astute German nation by the most reprehensible manipulations.
So Germany was taking Jews' stuff. They weren't allowing them to leave the country with their assets. Like they sell their house, they get, I don't know, $100,000 for their house or whatever in today's money. And they try to leave. And when they sell it, Germany just withdraws it right from their bank account. And now they have literally nothing. And Hitler claims that the Jews gained that money by manipulating Germans. No, they just worked like everybody else. There was literally no difference between the Jews and every other German. In fact, the Jews in Germany disproportionately fought for Germany in World War I. More Jews were on the front lines because they believed in the cause than there were Germans in World War I. So what Hitler is doing here is he's repeating the stab in the back myth. It was a conspiracy theory of the time that Hitler ascribed to that basically purported that, or basically said, Germany lost World War I because the Jews were behind the lines messing with stuff and pulling levers and making deals to make Germany fail because they wanted to make Germany fail. It was complete delusion, of course. There's absolutely no reason to believe any of it. In fact, there's evidence against any of that. But that's what makes it a conspiracy theory, right? So Hitler is repeating a conspiracy theory here.
Astute German nation by the most reprehensible manipulations. Today, we are merely paying this people what it deserves. When the German nation was, thanks to the inflation instigated and carried through by Jews, deprived of the entire savings which it had accumulated in years of honest work.
So he's saying that the economic hardship that the Germans dealt with, the inflation and everything else, that was the fault of the Jews. They orchestrated it intentionally so they could get rich off of that. This is populism, blaming some group of powerful people, claiming that it's a deep state that's working against everyone's interests and everything else. Now, in some cases, there really is a group of people working against the working class to benefit themselves, to further their own interests. Like right now, billionaires are doing that. But he claimed that Jews had a secret network that they worked together to nefariously hurt Germans because they wanted to. And he believed that genetically, Jews were inferior. It was like if you took a Jewish baby 2 days old and give it to a German family or an American or whatever, and the American family raises this Jewish baby, the person will grow up to be an evil monster because genetically they're just bad. Anyway, that's kind of, the conspiracy. It's all full of conspiracies.
When the rest of the world took away the German nation's foreign investments, when we were divested of the whole of our colonial possessions, these philanthropic considerations evidently carried little noticeable weight with democratic statesmen.
So basically, when Germans suffered, these democracies, the United States, Britain, France, they didn't give a shit when the Germans suffered. They only cared when the Jews suffered because they're controlled by Jews. That's the claim here. And just try to reframe it in your mind. Like, yeah, we're talking about Jews right now, but reframe it to be about like immigrants or the left. The left is doing all of this damage to society. It's identical to what is being said right now in the United States. Identical in every way.
Today, I can only assure these gentlemen that thanks to the brutal education with which the democracies favored us for 15 years, we are completely hardened to all attacks of sentiment.
They hurt us so badly over the past 15 years that we don't care about any of this anymore, and we're just going to do what it takes to improve our own lives, I think is what he's saying.
After more than 800,000 children of the nation had died of hunger and undernourishment at the close of the war, we witnessed almost 1 million head of milking cows being driven away from us in accordance with the cruel paragraphs of a dictate which the humane democratic apostles of the world forced upon us as a peace treaty.
Talking about the Treaty of Versailles. Yeah, the Treaty of Versailles really damaged Germany and their economy, but it was paying the world back, the reparations for the damage Germany did to the rest of, France and wherever else. And, the other countries, they kind of, like France, they were heads about it too. After World War I, they didn't just tell Germany, you can't do these things, you have to do this, you have to pay us this money. No, they were real heads about it. Like, the Rhineland is an area in Germany. It's kind of like a demilitarized zone, a DMZ, like a rural area. And Germany defaulted on one of their payments under the Treaty of Versailles. They had to pay the reparations. They defaulted on it, and France marched troops straight through the Rhineland and reclaimed it because they wanted to be heads instead of helping Germany find a solution, renegotiating or whatever. They were just assholes about it. And that pissed off Germans even more. Somebody said to me a while back, World War I and World War II were really the same war. There was just a little break in between. And I found that kind of interesting. I mean, there's a lot more nuance to it, obviously, but it's an interesting thought.
We witnessed over 1 million German prisoners of war being retained in confinement for no reason at all for a whole year after the war was ended.
Well, I mean, maybe it's because you invaded their country and tried to, take a whole bunch of land that wasn't yours. I think maybe that could have been the reason why. And maybe they were holding them as negotiating pieces, make sure your dumb didn't try to invade again. I mean, I don't even know if it's true. I'm just proposing possibilities here.
We witnessed over 1.5 million Germans being torn away from all that they possessed in the territories lying on our frontiers.
Literally justifying tearing people away from their lives and their assets. He's advocating for that while complaining that Germans had it torn away.
And being whipped out with practically only what they wore on their backs. We had to endure having millions of our fellow countrymen torn from us without their consent and without their being afforded the slightest possibility of existence.
I mean, think about what he's doing here, what he has done up to now with the Jews. He's complaining about this, not even acknowledging that he's doing the identical thing to another group of people. Like, are you shitting me right now? Like, he's such a whiny bitch. I'm sorry. Really. And he's so, not only is he a whiny bitch, but he's just dumb as dog. Like, are you really so stupid that you don't see the parallels here?
I could supplement these examples with dozens of the most cruel kind. For this reason, we ask to be spared all sentimental talk. The German nation does not wish its interests to be determined and controlled by any foreign nation. France to the French, England to the English, America to the Americans.
He's complaining about the Treaty of Versailles right now. After World War I ended, it ended with them with Germany sending basically a group of negotiators to the front lines to negotiate a peace treaty. And every minute that passed, people were dying. So they were rushing around. Who was it? Was it Woodrow Wilson Woodrow Wilson is, as the president, was the only one allowed to write treaties, but they had to be ratified by Congress or something like that. I don't even remember now. So he gets the Treaty of Versailles, runs to the Capitol building, calls an emergency session so that everybody, all the senators and everybody can get together and they can all ratify this treaty. And it had to be done instantaneously because people were dying by the second. So Germany rushes people to the front lines to meet with a delegation to write up this treaty, this agreement, the Treaty of Versailles. And the basics were Germany has to pay reparations for the damage that they did to England and France. And they also can't have a military larger than 100,000 foot soldiers, basically 100,000 men. And immediately after World War I, Germany collapsed, their monarchy collapsed into a democracy. It turned into the Weimar Republic, which is a brand new democracy, had a constitution, operated very similarly to the United States, actually. They had a Congress and they had senators or the equivalent. They had a president and everything, just like it. So he's complaining about basically the Treaty of Versailles and the existing government. They had democracy imposed upon them, the German people did, not through the Treaty of Versailles, but when the treaty was signed, democracy was imposed through the Weimar Republic.
America to the Americans and Germany to the Germans, we are resolved to prevent the settlement in our country of a strange people which was capable of snatching for itself all the leading positions in the land.
He's saying Germans belong in Germany. America first, Germany first, that kind of deal. We don't want to take in all of these odd people that don't belong here and are stealing our jobs. They're stealing our jobs. Do you notice what he said there? Capable of snatching for itself.
Capable of snatching for itself all the leading positions in the land.
They're stealing our jobs. These immigrants are taking our jobs. Identical to America today, I'm telling you.
And to oust it, for it is our will to educate our own nation for these leading positions. We have hundreds of thousands of very intelligent children of peasants and of the working classes. We shall have them educated. In fact, we have already begun, and we wish that one day they, and not the representatives of an alien race, may hold the leading positions in the state together with our educated classes.
So it was difficult to tell who was Jewish and who wasn't because they look like everybody else. It's not a race. In fact, race isn't real. It's a fabrication. I mean, there's ethnicity, I suppose. You know, you can go on 23andMe and look up where, you know, you have 2% African DNA and 15% like Welsh DNA or whatever. But race as a concept is fictitious. It's not real. There is no Jewish race. There are people who kind of follow a Jewish faith, and there are people from families that follow Jewish faith and have like a culture that they have kind of carried through the generations or whatever. But Hitler wanted to turn it into like a full-blown race, like black and white. And what freaked him out so much was the fact that there really is no difference between like Jewish and German. Like you can't tell the difference because they're white. They're both white. And he said that they were at the highest levels of society. They had infiltrated the church, the Christian church. They had converted to Christianity so that they could like meddle with it and everything. And he threw a big fit over the fact that like there were Jewish converts to Christianity that were like organists, you know, church musicians or whatever. 18,000 Protestant churches in Germany, just as many pastors, give or take, in that region, and somewhere in that range for musicians, right? Every church has a musician. Do you want to guess how many church musicians were Jewish converts? These people that were meddling with Christianity and trying to, you know, trick people and deceive them. Out of 18,000 churches, two church musicians were Jewish converts, full Jewish converts. So everything that he's saying is delusion, all of it, all the way down. But remember why we're listening. This is identical to what's happening today. Immigrants taking our jobs, poisoning the blood of our country. We need to think about America first. We want to make America great again. Hitler literally used the slogan, "Make Germany great again."
Above all, German culture, as its name alone shows, is German and not Jewish, and therefore its management and care will be entrusted to members of our own nation. If the rest of the world cries out with a hypocritical mien against this barbaric expulsion from Germany of such an irreplaceable and culturally eminently valuable element, we can only be astonished at the conclusions they draw from this situation.
So if they're so worried about Jews being expelled from Germany, why don't they, like these apostles of culture, as he says in a minute, why don't they want them in their country? And the answer is, it boils down to human rights. Like you're mistreating these people terribly. And it wasn't just Jews. I feel like we should reframe this, because framing it up as only Jews kind of puts people in a World War II mindset when it was about immigrants. And the Jews were the immigrants from the region and the era.
How thankful they must be that we are releasing these precious apostles of culture and placing them at the disposal of the rest of the world.
Like people just didn't want people to be mistreated like that is all.
in accordance with their own declarations, they cannot find a single reason to excuse themselves for refusing to receive this most valuable race in their own countries, nor can I see a reason why the members of this race should be imposed upon the German nation, while in the States, which are so enthusiastic about these splendid people, their settlement should suddenly be refused with every imaginable excuse.
Yeah, because I think at this point, the U.S. was refusing Jewish refugees. They were on a ship on their way to the United States, and the U.S. turned them around, said no. They had to go back and land in Europe again, and I believe that they all ended up in a concentration camp and died, all of those people. The world didn't, I mean, there were a lot of people that cared about what was happening to the Jews, but world governments, and honestly, probably most people in the world, didn't give a. The reason anybody got involved in World War II in the first place was because Hitler stepped outside Germany, tried to take Poland, tried to take Czechoslovakia, and, all these other places, eventually France and everything else. That's why everybody else got involved. If Hitler had stayed in Germany, closed the doors, and taken out every Jewish person in the country, nobody would have cared.
Excuse. I think that the sooner this problem is solved, the better, for Europe cannot settle down until the Jewish question is cleared up. It may very well be possible that sooner or later an agreement on this problem may be reached in Europe, even between those nations which otherwise do not so easily come together. The world has sufficient space for settlements, but we must once and for all get rid of the opinion that the Jewish race was only created by God for the purpose of being in a certain percentage a parasite living on the body.
Like, nobody believed that. Yeah, sure. There's a subset of, like, the Jewish community that are what one would call Zionists, that are completely out of their heads, drunk on extremism. They're like, it's a far-right, ultra-nationalist ideology that is basically the same as Nazism, in that Nazis believed that, like, the white race were superior. They were Aryans. They were powerful and smart and strong and everything else. In the same way, there's an ultra-nationalist wing of Zionists who are completely drunk on the same ideology, except for Jews. They believe that Jews are super powerful and smart and good and all of that other stuff. But that makes up a total of, like, I mean, what was the population at the time? Almost nobody. It wasn't the Jews that believed that. He was looking for an excuse to demonize this group of people, like saying trans people are trying to take advantage of your children. It's a general statement implying that all trans people are trying to do this to children. And, have they even come up with one example? I mean, I imagine people can come up with one example of anything. But do we even have one example of trans people taking advantage of a kid? I don't know. I've never heard of one. Maybe. The exception does not make the rule, is the problem.
And the productive work of other nations. The Jewish race will have to adapt itself to sound constructive activity as other nations do, or sooner or later it will succumb to a crisis of an inconceivable magnitude.
They're leeches on society, he says.
One thing I should like to say on this day, which may be memorable for others as well as for us Germans, in the course of my life, I have very often been a prophet and have usually been ridiculed for it. During the time of my struggle for power, it was in the first instance the Jewish race which only received my prophecies with laughter when I said that I would one day take over the leadership of the state.
So what he's doing here, calling himself a prophet? I wrote a book about it. Was Hitler an atheist? Amazon and Audible, owenmorgan.com. But there were a few times where he specifically shouted out Christianity, said we are a Christian people, we live by Christian ideals and all that other stuff. But for the most part, he left Christianity out of the conversation by and large, but he used religious overtones in his speeches. He said religious things like, I was a prophet, or these supposed apostles of culture. Or, when describing his life when he was younger, he would basically frame it up like Jesus' life, where he was redeemed, he was, baptized like Jesus, then terribly mistreated and lost everything. And then he was brought back, breath breathed back into him, kind of frame it up like that. That was his rhetorical style. And that's why people were so obsessed with him. That's why Christians were so obsessed with him. Was Hitler a Christian? To answer directly, yes. I believe that he was a Christian. But before anything else, he liked to manipulate Christians. And he liked to troll people.
And with it, that of the whole nation. And that I would then, among many other things, settle the Jewish problem. Their laughter was uproarious. But I think that for some time now, they have been laughing on the other side of their face. Today, I will once more be a prophet. If the international Jewish financiers in and outside Europe should succeed in plunging the nations once more into a world war.
There was a family called the Rothschilds at the time, and that's where Hitler is getting this. This is another conspiracy theory. The Rothschild family started with a guy named Meyer Rothschild, I think was his name. And he got a lot of his money by acting as a currency exchange and by loaning money. At the time, in the region in Europe, it was against the law for Christians to gain interest or charge interest of other Christians. So banks would hire Jews who would then charge interest and bring it in on behalf of the bank, so that no Christians were breaking any rules. They were having the Jews break the rules for them. Meyer Rothschild was involved in that system and had a lot of gold, and he went around and bought currencies from other, countries. Nathan Rothschild, I think, was his son or something. He was like the next one on the throne. Anyway, the Rothschilds basically made their money by working with European countries who were at war to act as the currency exchange. Like, these countries needed to hire mercenaries to fight on their behalf, but the mercenaries would only accept payment in their currency. So the countries would come to the Rothschild family and they'd say, can you, give us this much money in exchange for that much money? And he would do it. And that made him a ton of money. That made the whole family a ton of money. They became traditional, classic billionaires, which is to say, scumbags. Billionaires are scumbags by their very nature. But they didn't meddle in the political system after the Napoleonic Wars. They helped by paying mercenaries and loaning money to countries and things like that in the Napoleonic Wars. But they didn't do it after that. It was in like the early 1800s, basically. And Hitler claimed that the Rothschild family was meddling in the system, trying to destroy Germany for whatever stupid reason he cooked up. That's the whole thing.
Then the result will not be the Bolshevization of the earth.
Bolshevization by the Bolshevik Party is the Communist Party in Russia. That's what he means. He hated communists.
Then the result will not be the Bolshevization of the earth, and thus the victory of Jewry, but the annihilation of the Jewish race in Europe. The nations are no longer willing to die on the battlefield, so that this unstable international race may profiteer from a war or satisfy its Old Testament vengeance.
Again, this is a shout out to the Rothschild family. They eventually got to a point where they were very rich. And people said that they funded both sides of every war in history. That's not true. The Rothschilds had banks in England and Germany and France and stuff. And the banks worked with the countries. Like, countries would store their money in banks. It's like having a Chase Bank in Virginia and California and New York City or whatever, and claiming Chase Bank funds all wars between, or all the National Guards or whatever between the states. No, they're just banks in the area. Like, really? Anyway, that's what he's referring to here. The Rothschilds' fear-mongering nonsense came to a fever pitch when they started claiming that they were drinking babies' blood to gain special supernatural favor with God or whatever. Like, they're making a deal with demons and sacrificing babies to them and stuff. That's where all that came from.
Or satisfy its Old Testament vengeance.
Oh, was that the end? Oh, yeah, that was the end. Anyway, the point is, that was the end of the Hitler clip. The point is, as Andrew Tate said, was there anything in there that Republicans would disagree with? I mean, replace Jew with immigrant, because Jews were the immigrants or were viewed as the immigrants at the time. Was there anything that they disagree with? I didn't hear a thing. And to put icing on this cake, if you will, this cake, this is Ken Peters. He's a friend of Greg Locke's. He's one of Greg Locke's pastors. What do you call it? Like one of his, Locke runs a number of different churches, and Peters runs one of those churches on Locke's behalf. This is what he had to say on the subject.
And then we have a pagan president who made it his aim not to pick a qualified Supreme Court justice like a Clarence Thomas. Oh, pray for him. He's not feeling good right now. He cannot die when Biden is in the White House. He cannot die. That is a good man.
So, yeah, he was having a rough go of it at that moment. But Biden had just picked Ketanji Brown Jackson as the Supreme Court justice. And this is part of the anti-woke, anti-DEI, anti-CRT nonsense that Republicans were spreading around at the time. They're still spreading it around, but they were at the time too. And he says, Clarence Thomas is qualified by virtue of the fact that he agrees with him. Doesn't matter what your skin color if you agree with him. But if you're black and you don't agree with him, you're bad. That's it, period. If you're white and you don't agree with him, there might be a little bit of nuance in there. Maybe you can find some things to agree on here or there. That's the way that he views this whole system. It is fundamentally racist. And if you don't believe me, just listen a little further here.
And he's black, by the way, and we like him.
Jesus.
We like him a lot. See, we don't give a rip about color.
Totally.
We care about character and morals and godliness and holiness. We don't care if you're red, yellow, black, or white. All are precious in his sight. We have a brand new, did you know this? We have a Patriot church in the Philippines. Now, a Patriot church in the Philippines, that kind of messes up our whole white supremacist, American nationalist.
No, it doesn't. You're white supremacists and you're American nationalists. Why do you think this messes it up?
Whole thing. But you know what? The Filipinos should be patriotic about their country. And they should be fighting for their country too. It's not just about America. Whatever country God has put you in, whether you're in the Philippines or South America, Peru, or the United States of America, you got to fight for that country. God is not a globalist in the senses of how he built the world. As far as globalism is,
God's not a globalist? Oh my God.
Today, the Antichrist is a globalist. Jesus made nations. The Bible says that there will be people from every nation gathered around the throne.
Yeah, and what do you think that means, every nation? That means everybody around the world will be there, and nation will be irrelevant when you get there.
Guess what? You're still going to be American up in heaven. You're going to be in the USA section praising Jesus right next to Mexico and Canada. Woo!
He says there are going to be borders in heaven, and Mexicans aren't going to be allowed into the American section of heaven. That's what I'm talking about. This type of deal. What is there that Hitler said that these people disagree with? Is there anything? I think Andrew Tate was correct in saying that they agree with Hitler. Like all the way. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. This is Tom Homan, head of ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement. He's the one deporting people right now. This is at CPAC. Big Republican conference happens every year, I think.
I'm not going to be satisfied until every criminal alien gang member, every criminal alien, every Trenda Awa is eradicated from this country and send her to Gitmo where they belong.
He's responsible for deporting people, for deporting immigrants. And he says he wants them eradicated from the country. Eradicating them from the country. Why did he pick that word specifically? Why didn't he pick a different one? Why didn't he say something like, I want them all to be deported from the country rather than eradicated? Not for nothing, but this is identical to what happened in Germany. The whole complaint about the Jews, it was over immigration. They said that they were undocumented immigrants. They didn't belong there. Well, not undocumented. They just said they're immigrants. And Germany should belong to the Germans. America should belong to the Americans. In 50 years, I hope that we can look at this face and feel the same way that we feel when we see Joseph Goebbels' face or Göring's face or Himmler's face. I hope that we feel the same about this guy as we do about Hitler and his inner circle today.
I love my job.
His job is literally tearing families apart. His job is to destroy people's lives. And he says he wants them sent to Guantanamo Bay. That is a literal concentration camp. I mean, it's, as far as we know, not a death camp. I have no reason to believe that it's a death camp, tantamount to the death camps in Germany. But it's absolutely, most definitely, for sure, a concentration camp like the ones in Germany in the 30s. A lot of, I think there were like 6 concentration camps that were particularly bad. They were considered death camps, but if I remember correctly, Sachsenhausen concentration camp, I could be wrong, correct me in the comments if so, was primarily designed for like political prisoners or prisoners that could be useful in like a prisoner exchange, for example, or could be used for leverage. Like Martin Niemöller, dude that famously wrote that poem, First They Came for the Communists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a communist, then the socialists, then the trade unionists, and whatever. Then they came for me, and there's no one left to speak for me. He was put into Sachsenhausen because he was world famous and could be used as a bargaining chip in the future. Sachsenhausen, his stay at Sachsenhausen wasn't as bad as some other stays by other people. He was not subjected to slave labor necessarily. I believe that the worst that he had to deal with was like solitary confinement for extended periods of time. So concentration camps were camps where people were housed in concentrated numbers. Sometimes there was slave labor, which, by the way, is legal in the U.S. Constitution for prisoners' slave labor. And sometimes there was a mechanized death system, a mechanized system of murder. Guantanamo Bay is absolutely for sure 100% a concentration camp. And the dude says, I love my job. That is some sick right there. This is another little section of him talking to CPAC.
Look, let me start out by saying this. If I offend anybody today, I don't give a shit.
Great, I don't give a shit either. There's literally nothing he could say that would offend me. I'm not offended easily. In fact, I don't know anybody that's easily offended, honestly. I mean, I'm gonna see you as a complete sack of shit. Are you saying you don't care if I see you as the sack of shit that you are? Okay, great. That saves me a lot of time. Now, I appreciate you acknowledging that you're a sack of shit.
Don't care. The media in the back room, I'm sure I'll be reading a lot of hit pieces on me tomorrow. I don't give a shit what you think about me.
Well, great. I think that you're a monster tantamount to Himmler or Göring, like a deeply, truly evil human being who will go down in history as one of the world's most disgusting evil villains. I believe that's how he's going to be remembered. If that's what you want to be remembered by, okay, great. Then we're all on the same page.
I get asked all the time, does it bother you? There's a big part of this country that hates your guts. I don't care. I don't care.
You know, it's not even about hating his guts. Like, there are a lot of people that hate my guts. I don't care. I would like to think that he's concerned about the fact that he's like a genuinely deep inside, like a bad person, like an evil person. Is it really all about image for you?
because we got a job to do. You know,
Because we've got a job to do, he says. Jesus Christ. I already talked about this in another video, so I'm not gonna hit it again, but he's the kind of person that posts this on the White House Twitter account. From the White House Twitter account, ASMR, illegal alien deportation flight. If you are unfamiliar, ASMR is sound that is enjoyable to people, that they can go to sleep to. The White House posted an ASMR video of people being dragged in chains to an airplane and then shipped out of the country, like destroying people's lives. This is, I always wondered, like, how did people get to the point where they were so soulless as to be okay with what was happening to the Jews in Germany? Now I know. I wondered, and now I know. That's the kind of right there that Tom Homan takes pride in. He's an evil monster. Now, aside from that, there was some other wild, bizarre at CPAC. This is Jack Posobiec right here on screen. We don't actually know who runs the account called End Wokeness on Twitter, but I believe that it's Jack Posobiec based on a number of things that I've come to conclude. Take it or leave it. I'm pretty confident that's who it is. Anyway, Jack Posobiec is famous in his own right on the twit. Listen to what he had to say at CPAC.
Trump is not violating the Constitution. Donald Trump is restoring the American Constitution.
No, he's violating it, actually. Congress has the power of the purse. They control where money goes and what it's allocated to. And the president has the sole responsibility to uphold what Congress says and does, uphold the laws that they want passed, and pay out when they assign money to places or whatever. And he's just not. He's decided, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Trump is violating the Constitution. We don't have a Constitution right now that's being respected by the president or anybody in the executive branch. So he absolutely is. We are not in a democracy. Now I believe that we're in a hybrid system, because I think that our elections probably still work, and our system will hold if Trump is impeached or, elected or not elected again or whatever. I believe the system will hold. But we live in a system that is not respected by the elected representative. That's a hybrid system at best.
Donald Trump is the living embodiment of the American Constitution. Donald Trump is embodying the values of our founding fathers for the first time in a long time.
In what way?
In Washington, D.C. President Trump came up and he found the destiny of the American people lying in the gutter. And he picked it up with his bare hands and he yelled, "Fight, fight, fight."
Just portraying a completely different reality for us. I don't believe that Jack Posobiec is a true believer. I don't know enough about him to be able to say for sure. Maybe he is a true believer. Who knows? But I don't know, man. I'm having a hard time believing it. I'm having a hard time believing that anybody is this fucking stupid.
And the American people delivered their mandate to him and put it on his head. And as President Trump himself said,
put it on his head, delivered his mandate, put it on his head. You mean like a crown? I don't give a shit what you think people voted for. They can't vote for a king in the United States.
Just a few days ago, a man who saves his nation violates no law. That is the way forward in America.
That is incorrect. You can violate a law, even if you think that you're saving your country. Even if you do save your country, you can be violating laws. And viewing things from that perspective is about as destructive as it gets. It's bad to view things like that, because you can literally justify absolutely anything. If you believe you're right, which, by the way, literally everybody does, every single human being believes that they're right, then you can do anything. if you hold that belief. So Trump has just created a justification to do anything. Again, Posobiec wasn't even the most psychotic, but what he's referring to here is this picture. Donald Trump wearing a crown. White House, congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. Donald Trump said, long live the king. Posted a picture of himself wearing a crown. It doesn't get any more obvious than that. That's about as disturbing as it gets. I said this before. I did a video on this. I'm not going to go through it again, but I'll say this. Germany had democracy imposed upon them. The Germans did in the 1920s when the Weimar Republic came around. The German people didn't want democracy or weren't used to democracy. They were used to a monarchy with some democratic principles behind it. And the church believed in Germany that it was blasphemous for their constitution to say it was a government for the people, by the people, because the church believed the only valid government is created by God and ordained by God. So they were looking for an opportunity to destroy the existing hierarchy in the region at the time. And when Hitler came along, they found that excuse. They found that opportunity. They took it, and they collapsed into a dictatorship from a democracy. In the United States, it doesn't really work that way with us. Like, we have a long history of loving democracy. Like, it's taught to us when we're young, and of hating kings. What's the war that you learn about when you're in like elementary school or middle school? For me, it was the Revolutionary War in Connecticut, and then the Civil War in West Virginia. The Revolutionary War was all about not having a king. Donald Trump is naming himself a king right now, but he doesn't have a successor. When he dies, there isn't a single human alive that'll be able to command the, MAGA obedience the way that he does. So he can name himself a king all he wants, but that kingship, that kingdom is going to collapse as soon as he dies, in my personal opinion. We live in a hybrid system right now, not a democracy, but I believe that's short term because we value democracy in a way that Germany did not at the time. We've never known a monarchy here, so here we go. Right, exactly. Anyway, there's a little bit of positivity for you, a little bit of nuance. I don't think that MAGA Republicans will continue to back up J.D. Vance, for example, when Trump dies. And dude's like 97 years old. He's got one foot in the grave, one on a banana peel, in my opinion. Hitler was 30 to 45 or 30 to 50 when all of his stuff went down. Trump is really, really old. He doesn't have much time left. I mean, he's honestly, in my opinion, I think Trump's doing okay right now. He has the odd verbal glitch, the slip up. He says odd things, goes in weird directions, but I think he's okay. But there will come a time, not in the far future either, where he's just like not all there anymore. And it's all just going to come crashing down. When that happens, I don't believe that anyone else will be able to command MAGA the way that Trump does. And I believe that we'll have more of a democracy at that point than we do at this moment. Not a full democracy, still be hybrid, but it'll be a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Anyway, there's a little bit of positivity for you. But, speaking of Trump being a king, aren't like religious nutter butters like opposed to that? I thought Jesus was king. I didn't think the kings were acceptable. When you think about it, though, like Trump regularly does sacrilegious or pagan things, right? Naming himself a king. Do you guys remember this golden statue of Donald Trump from 2021 CPAC? Literally a golden statue of Donald Trump. A golden statue. How were his supporters okay with this? How did he get away with this, honestly? Trump, Pence. And here's another interesting little bit right here. Check this out. There's a new statue at Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago, a bizarre golden-hoofed goat idol is on display. The idol is wrapped in Trump $100 bills that say, "In Trump we trust," replacing God with Trump. The idol's base says, "I love you," along with Trump's signature. Jeremiah Johnson says, "I could swear the Bible had something about this." That's weird, right? What is going on? I don't understand, like, why or how is it that, like, Trump's sycophantic followers have not recognized by now that he is at least the Antichrist, but more likely, obviously, is just a scumbag that's cynically using them. How have they not connected those dots? I don't understand. What does he have to do? He literally built a goat statue and replaced God with his own name. Really? I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Okay, let's continue. Hilariously, though, at CPAC, they had the January 6ers. They showed up there and they were kicked out. The January 6 people were kicked out. Just in, Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes was kicked out of CPAC. Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, was pardoned by President Trump, and he was also kicked out. Stuart Rhodes says he was told his press credentials were revoked and he was told to leave. When he asked why, Rhodes claims staff told him legal, quote unquote. I'm reaching out to CPAC for comment. Rhodes recently had his 18-year prison sentence commuted by President Trump. Oh, we have video of it too, hilariously. We have video of them being kicked out and them about it. Oh, I love it, dude.
Okay. They're escorting Jake Lang out of CPAC again.
I'm not sure who the guy is that's speaking. I don't think it's Stuart Rhodes.
After I just took care of all this, and they said we could all come back in. Now, here we go again.
Holy dude, these are the January 6ers show up to CPAC and they're being forcefully, like, ejected from the premises. That's illegal, what they just did. I mean, those people aren't cops. Only cops are allowed to get physical with people in that way.
Okay, that officer just assaulted that young man. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually CPAC. This is how they're treating J6ers. It's incredible. This is unbelievable.
God, I mean, what is it going to take for you to realize that it was all a political stunt? Donald Trump doesn't give a shit about you. You thought he did? You poor dumb fool. The dude had an opportunity to pardon you in his first term. Okay, he had 2 full weeks of you people being hunted down by the FBI and thrown in jail. He had 2 weeks. There was a full manhunt underway. People going on Bumble and stuff and trying to find January 6 people so they'd be charged. And Donald Trump just let it happen. How are you so gullible as to think he gave a shit about you in the first place? These people are jokes. It's like honestly sad that they fell for this, that they believed this.
They just threw a bunch out again. Here they are. Look, there's Corey. Look. Look here. Here they are. Look. So here's Jake. Here's Corey. I just got this all worked out for them to be here. And they assaulted this young man in the process. I got it on video. I have it.
Yeah, I think they did. But what's he going to do about it? Nothing.
I've got it, sir. Yeah. Okay. I got you. I got it all.
This is the right time.
These people are so gullible. Donald Trump never gave a shit about you. Here's another one. They're arguing with one of the security guys or whatever he is. I have no idea what he is.
I'm in prison for my country. Okay?
And I appreciate that.
Well, apparently y'all don't, because CPAC is steady every day kicking us out of CPAC.
Okay.
Just for being J6ers, I'm not the first one.
Okay.
So can you explain me why you would kick J6ers that were persecuted for 4 years, pardoned by President Trump, okay? Then I won my appeal and my whole case was dismissed.
Okay.
I have a clean record. There's
Okay.
nothing going on with me.
Okay.
Why would you kick a J6er out of CPAC?
Okay.
Like, it has nothing to do with his legal trouble. I mean, they let felons in all the time. Donald Trump is a felon. Of course they let felons in. He's a convicted felon. He just received no sentence. Being a felon isn't the problem. It's being what Trump views as scum. I don't know how else to phrase it. Like, I don't know what gave you the idea that Donald Trump gave a shit about any of you people, but he doesn't. He never did. They think that Trump gives a shit about like the blue collar worker. No, he doesn't. He does not care about blue collar workers. And it blows me away that you actually believed that. You're not welcome there. Donald Trump has spent his entire life trying to stay away from you people. Let me just show you one piece of evidence about what I'm talking about here. Look, perfect example. Donald Trump about to shake this dude's hand, honoring Black History Month. The guy goes in for a hug and Trump backs up. One more time. Trump backed up. He wasn't going to take a hug from the dude because he's black. Trump famously refused to rent to black tenants and was sued over it and got all kinds of fines and stuff from the, I don't know who handles that. I don't remember, the SEC or who knows. Anyway, some 3-letter organization sued the shit out of him for that. He does not like people like you. I'm sorry to be the one to break this to you, but I feel like you should have known this after like 10 years.
And my whole case was dismissed. Okay. I have a clean record. There's nothing going on with me. Okay. Why would you kick a J6er out of CPAC in all places?
Are you ready for me to answer?
Yes.
Like I initially, remember what I first initially said, is that I have very limited information.
Yes.
And I do not.
Okay. So why didn't somebody come down here that has the information?
Well, because they're very busy today.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So
I've been very busy in prison for 4 years.
That I understand. But as of right now, they want you out of the hotel, or at least out of the CPAC.
Well,
Anyway, the point is that they never liked the January 6ers. Trump didn't like the January 6ers, didn't give a shit about them. It was all a political move to benefit himself politically. That's it. I mean, tell me what you think about this. I'm blown away that this is just like the first time they're realizing this.
We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com.
I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they worked together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon.
There's no question that President Trump is the president of peace and deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for the historic achievements of his first term alone.
You what? You think he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize? Because he's the president of peace? This is the guy who announced that he intends to invade Panama. And I believe that that's absolutely 100% real. Do I think he's going to invade Greenland? No, I don't. Because there would be serious consequences for that, economic and otherwise. France said that they were going to put troops in Greenland to protect it. I think he knows better than to attack Greenland, but I think if he believed he could get away with it, he absolutely would. The point is that he talks about going to war all the time. He declared war on the cartels in Mexico, justified legally bombing Mexico. Like, really? He started trade wars, like countless trade wars. He's the president of peace? Where is your head? Where did you get this? This is just fictitious trash. I'll tell you who I think deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, there's a guy named Elie Wiesel. He wrote a book titled Night. It was about his experience in Auschwitz in the concentration camp, the Nazi concentration camp. He received a Nobel Peace Prize and gave a speech on everything. He deserved it. What did Donald Trump do to deserve it? Did he spend time in a concentration camp? Did he, as a prisoner? Is what I mean. Sorry, not as like the administrator, but as a prisoner. Has he done that? Has Donald Trump actually ended any wars? Has he actually improved people's lives materially? Has he spread democracy legitimately through the world without like imposing it on people or whatever? No. He's engaged in colonialism, in imperialism. He has threatened people and ruined lives. And is shipping people to a concentration camp, a literal concentration camp in Guantanamo Bay right now. Where in that equation do you get Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, she wasn't the only one that suggested the Nobel Peace Prize. Like, I don't get what it is about people recommending a Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump of all people.
To you all,
This is another CPAC speaker.
the American taxpayer, to recoup
the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been invested in this war. Because you know what? You know what Europe's contributions are? Europe's contributions are in the form of loans.
This is all lies. Pretty much everything that he's saying here is Russian propaganda. He's repeating Russian propaganda, as has Donald Trump. Trump repeated Russian propaganda about Ukraine. The money that we send, or the supplies or whatever that we send to Ukraine, is the best money that we have ever spent. We are discrediting a historical adversary, a country that views themselves as an adversary of ours, not something that I want. It's something that Putin is saying. He says he's an adversary of the United States. It discredits them on a world stage and proves that they're not anywhere near as strong as they want everybody to think. They can't even take on little Ukraine, their neighbor. Third strongest military in the world, Anyway, the point is that it's the best money we've ever spent. We are, and most of the money that we're sending, it's not even money, it's in supplies that we are manufacturing in the U.S. So the money that we're spending is going to guns, which are manufactured here and then sent to Ukraine. So all that money is going back into our economy. It's well spent. So don't listen to any of this trash straight out of Putin's mouth.
And they're often paid back on the interest on Russian assets that have been frozen. So Europe gets paid back, but the American people don't.
Not how it works. Complete nonsense, but okay.
I don't think so, right? And so that's the deal that we're putting in place. That's good for everyone. And yes, you have to talk to the Russian side to understand how we're going to get both sides to the table. And that's...
Well, that wasn't the complaint. If you're watching this 5 years in the future, the complaint is that the United States met with Russia to negotiate the Ukraine war without inviting Ukraine. They weren't even there. Why would they have this negotiation without Ukrainian representatives? That's the problem. I don't have a problem with you speaking to Russia, but don't pick up their propaganda and include everybody in the conflict, in the negotiations. Again, it's all lies all the way down, but the point is at the end of this video here.
We're doing. Look, this is the common sense presidency. This is the presidency of peace. He's going to end the war in Europe. He is going to end the wars in the Middle East. He is going to reinvest the United States and our leadership in our own hemisphere, from the Arctic to the border to Panama, all the way down to our good friends in Argentina with Milei that you saw yesterday. And you know what? By the end of this all, we're going to have the Nobel Peace Prize sitting next to the name of Donald J. Trump. And who opposes peace? How do the Democrats oppose peace?
You see what I'm saying, right? Who opposes peace? He says Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, and who opposes peace? You can't oppose Trump because he is in favor of peace. Are you shitting me right now? What has Trump done that has, promoted peace? What are you talking about? Point is, I don't know, where they're getting this. I think that this is just something that Trump wants. He just really wants the Nobel Peace Prize. So he's getting people out there to talk about it, to promote it, to put him up, for a nomination or whatever. Nominate him for the Peace Prize. Complete nonsense. He doesn't deserve the Peace Prize. And if there is a just world, he will never have the Nobel Peace Prize, ever. Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, and I'm not even convinced that Obama deserved it. Obama got the prize, I believe, because he was the first black president, and it showed that it was kind of like the end of an era, the end of an era of segregation and oppression and everything else. I mean, obviously, there's still segregation and oppression in the United States, but it was a big step. Obama probably didn't deserve a Nobel Peace Prize because of all the drone attacks that he did. He did so many drone attacks. He wasn't a president of peace by any stretch of the imagination. It was really bad. Really bad. But he certainly deserves it more than, say, Donald Trump, who doesn't deserve it at all. And it's an embarrassment that somebody would even recommend this, would suggest such a thing. Let's just listen to a minute or two of Elie Wiesel talk, giving his Nobel Peace Prize speech. He received it and gave the speech, I believe, in 1986.
Your Majesty, Your Royal Highnesses, Storting President Joe Benkoff, distinguished members of the government and parliament, Chief Rabbi of Norway, Bishop of Oslo, Excellencies, my sister Hilda, and of course my wife.
I'm going to cut out the silent parts. I'm just going to include, like, the parts that are important and relevant.
How can I thank you for the depth of your eloquence, for the generosity of the gesture coming from you and your colleagues? How can I thank you for building bridges between generations, names, and people? How can I thank you all for helping humanity make peace as its most urgent, as its most noble aspiration? For this is what you are doing, and there is nothing that is worthier of our respect and our affection for you. I am moved, deeply moved, by your meaningful and warm words, Chairman Orwick. And it is with a profound sense of humility that I accept the honor, the highest there is, that you have chosen to bestow upon me.
It's probably why Donald Trump wants it, because it's viewed as an honor.
I know. Your choice transcends my person. Do I have the right to represent the multitudes who have perished, of whom you have spoken? Do I have the right to accept this great honor on their behalf? Does anyone? I do not. No one may speak for the dead. No one may interpret their mutilated dreams and visions. And yet, at moments such as this, at all moments, I sense their presence. I always do. The presence of my parents, that of my little sister.
If I remember correctly, he tells his story in his book, Night, but I believe his little sister died at the concentration camp. His dad died at the camp also. Man, it was just, God, he's got like a really hard story.
How can I not sense the presence of those that were part of you, friends, teachers, companions? But this honor belongs to those who remember them. This honor belongs to all the survivors, to their children, and through us, to the Jewish people with whose destiny I have always identified.
I believe that in his book, or in the foreword to his book at least, he said he doesn't believe in God anymore because of what happened to him, because he saw so many people die, because he was working in the camp by force, slave labor, while the ashes of his sister and his mom and his other family rained down on him from the crematorium chimney. It would, it would be hard to believe in God after some like that. This guy got the Nobel Peace Prize, and he deserved it. What has Donald Trump done to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? Has he done anything like this at all? Like anything even close, even like approximating something like what Elie Wiesel has experienced?
I remember. It happened yesterday or eternities ago. A young Jewish boy discovered the kingdom of night. I remember his bewilderment. I remember his anguish. It all happened so fast. The ghetto, the decrees, the persecutions, the deportation, the sealed cattle car, the fiery altar upon which the history of my people and the future of mankind were meant to be sacrificed. I remember that young boy asked his father, "Tell me," he said, "can this be true? This is the 20th century after all. This is not the Middle Ages. Who would allow such crimes to be committed? And how could the world remain silent?" And now that very boy is turning to me. "Tell me," he says, "what have you done with my years? What have you done with your life, which is mine?"
So he's imagining himself as a young boy sitting in Auschwitz, talking to his adult self, saying, "What have you done with the time that you received after exiting the camp? What have you done with the time that people died to give you back, which was stolen by the Nazis?"
And then I tell him I tell him that I have tried to keep memory alive, that I have tried to fight those who forget, because as you have said, if we forget, we are guilty, we are accomplices, we could not prevent their death the first time. But if we forget them, they will be killed the second time. And this time, it will be our responsibility. So I also explained to that boy who was asking me questions how naive he was, how naive we all were. The world did know and remained silent.
They did, absolutely.
And that is why I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must speak. We must take sides. For neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere. When human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy, national borders and sensitivities become irrelevant.
When there's terrible suffering, borders become irrelevant. We shouldn't care where people are from or what their background is or who they are, whatever. We should care about helping.
Wherever men or women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe. Of course, since I am a Jew profoundly rooted in my people's memory and tradition, my first response is to Jewish fears, Jewish needs, Jewish crises. For I belong to a traumatized generation, one that experienced the abandonment and solitude of my people. It would be unnatural for me not to make Jewish priorities my own. It would be unnatural for me not to love Israel with all my heart as I do. Please remember what I remember.
So what he's doing here, he's about to criticize Israel, basically. He's about to say Israel is doing something really terrible to the Palestinians and it needs to be examined. And I know that Israel will do the right thing and back off. That's basically what he said. I think, is he still alive? There's no way he's still alive, is there? He died 2016 at 87.
Israel, if God forbid defeated, it would be the end of Israel. The only country in the world which is so endangered, totally in its existence.
You know, Israel was, in a lot of ways, just as bad at the time as they are today. One of the big problems is that, Israel conflates being Jewish with being Israeli. It's an ethno-state. They believe themselves to be the only legitimate rulers or politicians or whatever in the country. So they exclude everybody else from the democratic process. That's nationalistic and that's destructive as it gets. Elie Wiesel, at the time in 1986, felt that Israel was like the last stand. Like if some goes down like it has historically against the Jews, then they will be safe in Israel, or they can fight from Israel at the very least. But Israel is perpetrating the exact same horrors that the Nazis perpetrated in World War II. So now, and even back then, there's no excuse.
How can we, people such as myself, not think in these terms? But I am also, of course, committed to Soviet Jews who need freedom and Jews in Arab lands who need solidarity. But I said that Jewish priorities are my first priorities. They are not exclusive. Others are important to me. Other people, other ideas, other situations, other tragedies matter to me. Believe me that apartheid
in South Africa, right? It hadn't come to an end yet. That didn't end until 1991, I think.
Is in my view as abhorrent as anti-Semitism. To me, Andrei Sakharov's isolation is as much of a disgrace as Joseph Biegun's imprisonment and Ida Nudel's exile, as is the denial of solidarity and its leader Lech Walesa's right to dissent, and Nelson Mandela's interminable imprisonment.
Nelson Mandela, the leader, or was a civil rights leader in South Africa during apartheid. I think he was the first black president after apartheid collapsed and a new government with a new constitution formed, if I remember correctly. I think Mandela also got a Nobel Peace Prize, and it was very much deserved in his case. Elie Wiesel goes on to say that he cares about the Palestinians' suffering too. Super respectable. He's written about this at length and was just a respectable person. He deserved the Nobel Peace Prize. Again, what did Donald Trump do to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize precisely? What did Trump do for that?
There is no question that President Trump is the president of peace and deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for the historic achievements of his first term alone.
What did he do in his first term to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize? What did he do in his first term that is even close to a little bit comparable to what Elie Wiesel did?
There is so much injustice and suffering crying out for our attention. Victims of hunger, of racism, and political persecution. Certain fascist regimes, like in Chile, or Marxist regime, like in Ethiopia and in other places of the world, where writers and poets are prisoners. And there are so many prisoners in so many lands. By the left, by the extreme left, and by the right, the extreme right. Now, you know, as I do, that human rights are being violated on every continent. More people are oppressed than free. How can one not be sensitive to their plight? Human suffering anywhere concerns men and women everywhere. And in spite of what some extreme critics have said about me, that principle applies in my life also to the Palestinians, to whose plight I am sensitive, but whose methods I deplore when they lead to violence. Violence is not the answer. Terrorism is the most dangerous of answers. I know they are frustrated, and that is understandable, and something must be done about it. The refugees in the refugee camps and their misery, the children and their fear, the uprooted and their hopelessness. I know something must be done about their situation. I know that too. Both the Jewish people and the Palestinian people have lost too many sons and shed too much blood. This must stop, and all attempts to stop it must be encouraged peacefully. Israel will cooperate. I am sure of that. I trust Israel, for I have faith in the Jewish people.
Well, he was incorrect, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, and he lived long enough to see that. 2016, Israel was just as monstrous as ever in 2016. It's just like really horrific and sad. There's nothing that's going to fix it. Until Israel basically stops being an ethno-state, and absolutely like ultra-nationalist nutcases. That's what's going to happen. They just have to give up their ultra-nationalist roots. That's it.
Let Israel be given a chance. Let hatred and danger be removed from her horizons, and there will be peace in and around the Holy Land. Yes, I have faith. I have faith in God, in the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I even have faith in his creation. Without faith, no action would be possible, and action is the only remedy to indifference.
The point is that the guy cares about solving the human suffering problem. He used his platform as a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize to try to draw attention to the most horrific parts of society, of human society in that moment. Again, I ask, what did Donald Trump do that deserves the Nobel Peace Prize precisely?
Down to our good friends in Argentina with Milei that you saw yesterday. And you know what? By the end of this all, we're going to have the Nobel Peace Prize sitting next to the name of Donald J. Trump. And who opposes peace? Like, I mean, how do the Democrats oppose peace?
What did he do to deserve that? The answer is nothing. He doesn't deserve the Peace Prize. He will never deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. If there's something opposite of the Nobel Peace Prize, maybe he deserves that. The exact opposite. The Nobel, I've f***ed everything up for everybody prize. Anyways, just like disgusting. Just really disgusting that anybody would even suggest such a thing. That Trump gets a Nobel Peace Prize. Just bad. Tell me what you think in the comments. Let's just listen to a little bit more of this, though.
Indifference, the most insidious danger and disease of all. Isn't this the meaning of Alfred Nobel's legacy? Wasn't his fear of war a shield against war? There is so much to be done, and there is much that can be done. I have learned it in my life. One person, a Raoul Wallenberg, for instance, an Albert Schweitzer, a Martin Luther King, one person of integrity, of courage, can make a difference.
Martin Luther King. That was really interesting. He shouted him out.
A difference of life and death.
Like all of the people on the list who deserve Nobel Peace Prizes or have been nominated for them or have received them or whatever are people or are the types of people that Donald Trump attacks and hates and spews vile garbage about them. Why does he think he fits in with this group of people? And you know what's really sad about it? The fact that Donald Trump has been nominated in the first place by multiple people, multiple times. He's been nominated for the prize, the Nobel Peace Prize. That is just sad.
And therefore I know that as long as one dissident is in prison, our freedom will not be true. As long as one child is hungry, our lives will be filled with anguish and shame. For I have seen children hungry. What all these victims need, above all, is to know that they are not alone, that we are not forgetting them, that when their voices are stifled, we shall lend them ours, that while their freedom depends on ours, the quality of our freedom depends on theirs. So this is what I say to the young Jewish boy wondering what I have done with his years. It is in his name that I speak to you and that I express to you my deepest gratitude. You should know that no one is capable of gratitude as one who has emerged from that kingdom of night.
No one is capable of gratitude if they haven't emerged from that kingdom of night. He's talking about, his book was called Night, and it was basically about the darkest moment in human history, the darkest moment in his own history. Those who have not experienced true, deep grief, danger, and pain. He's saying they won't be able to experience true gratitude. I don't know if that's true, but I get the sentiment he's laying down for us here.
Know that every moment is a moment of grace. Every hour is an offering. And not to share them would mean to betray them and mean not to be worthy of them. Our lives no longer belong to us, no longer belong to us alone. They belong to all those who need us desperately. And therefore I say thank you, Chairman Egil Orvik, and thank you, the very distinguished members of the Nobel Committee. And thank you, people of Norway. Thank you, people of Norway, for declaring on this singular occasion that our survival has meaning for mankind.
Yeah, that's the end of the speech. Trump is not even in the same ballpark as Elie Wiesel. Not even close. They have nothing in common. Nothing. They stand for two completely different, like, ideologies, two completely different, like, beliefs, two different everythings. And Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. I think that Trump has only been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 4 times. I mean, 4 is like way more. It's 4 more than it should have been, but Trump's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for the 4th time, a recognition prompted by his role in brokering the historic Abraham Accords. This is January 31st, 2024 is when this article was written. Trump did not broker the Abraham Accords, and the Abraham Accords did not bring peace to the Middle East. The Abraham Accords were basically just a deal to get, I believe, the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, a little country in the Middle East there. They got the UAE to trade openly with Israel. Like they opened trade partnership or whatever. And that was a big deal because nobody in the Middle East wants to work with Israel because of what they're doing to Palestine right now. And that was shot to shit when Israel ramped up their genocide against the Palestinians. So Trump likes to claim he brokered peace in the Middle East, but A, that didn't even work. The Abraham Accords didn't stick, and they didn't even do that much in the first place. Great, one country is openly trading with them. Fantastic. And B, Trump didn't even do the deal. I believe it was Jared Kushner who kind of, worked this whole deal out in the first place. So he doesn't deserve it at all. Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney spearheaded the nomination, emphasizing Trump's instrumental role in the signing of the Abraham Accords in September 2020. These accords aimed to normalize relations between Israel, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, with later agreements involving Morocco and Sudan. Tenney highlighted Trump's unprecedented efforts in facilitating new peace agreements in the Middle East, challenging long-standing beliefs that such agreements were unattainable without resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Yeah, so obviously it was attainable, but it was going to crumble. It's going to fall apart, like nearly instantaneously. The moment the genocide ramps up again, it's going to fall apart. And it did, as predicted. It was pointless for Donald Trump to do this or to take part in this or whatever. And everybody knew that. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. I just don't get how these poor, ridiculous, dumb fools can say these things with a straight face.
But by the end of this all, we're going to have the Nobel Peace Prize.
How do they say this? Tell me what you think in the comments.
We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Steve Bannon at CPAC did a Nazi salute right here. We'll listen in a second, but Nick Fuentes, of all people, white nationalist, full-blown neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, had something to say about Bannon doing the Nazi salute.
This was some sick. Bannon gets up there and says, I think Trump's going to run in 28. He goes, we want Trump. And then he throws up a straight up Roman salute. It's getting a little uncomfortable even for me. Even I'm starting to feel like that guy in the picture that wouldn't hail Hitler.
If you're unfamiliar, that's actually kind of funny. This is what he's talking about. This famous old picture. One guy in a sea of others that wouldn't do it. A dude's name was August Landmesser is his name. Anyway, one more thing to note here. The Roman salute is the Nazi salute. Romans never did that salute. I don't know why people call it the Roman salute. It's the Nazi salute. It's the Bellamy salute, if you prefer. I feel like it's kind of trying to normalize the salute a little bit by calling it the Roman salute. Anyway, listen to what Bannon did here. This is his appearance at CPAC.
The only way that they win is we retreat, and we're not going to retreat. We're not going to surrender. We're not going to quit. Fight, fight, fight.
Throws it up.
Amen.
He throws it up and people cheer. And Bannon is actually a Nazi, like actually really a Nazi, not pretending, not trolling. he actually believes this stuff.
Amen.
Yeah, I read a book a while back called The Turner Diaries, and it basically moves you from... It's written as though it's their diary entries by a guy named Earl Turner, and it brings you from a standard Republican of today, where he's upset about how black people are treated better than white people, all this other stupid, you know how it is. And he moves from there all the way to full-blown genocide against the black community and Mexicans and others, non-white people in America, like full-blown Holocaust. Starts talking about how Hitler was doing the right thing and everything, the whole nine. Bannon, it seems to me, is very much there. If I had to guess, I would say he is a fan of the Turner Diaries. I did a whole breakdown of the Turner Diaries, by the way, on my main channel, I believe, if you're curious about it. Anyway, keep listening to Fuentes talk about Bannon giving this salute, because there's more to the video.
It's even getting a little uncomfortable, and I'm saying that, you know? And I was writing policy memos for Supreme Leader Kanye West, okay? I was writing policy papers based on Hitler's policies for Supreme Leader Ye. And
you know what's funny about this? I mean, funny, you know, more sad than funny, but ironic maybe. Hitler wrote policy papers based on America's race laws about how people were segregated. They weren't allowed to go to school together. They weren't allowed to get married and all that other stuff. They weren't allowed to have children if they were like black and white. Hitler based the Nuremberg laws on that. And here we are on the other side of it. Nick Fuentes writing policy papers based on Hitler's policy, based on America's policy from the 1800s.
It's getting even a little excessive for me. Bannon goes up there and he's like, Trump is our guy in 28. Person like that only comes around twice in a country's history. We want Trump. And then a straight up salute. And even me, I'm kind of looking around like, is everyone see that? Is everyone rocking with this?
Okay, that's kind of funny. But yeah, he is a full-blown Nazi. Nick Fuentes is. And so is Bannon. He isn't uncomfortable with it. He's excited for it, in all seriousness. Now, speaking of Kanye West, since he mentioned him, I was kind of perusing the twit as I do, and I came across Carrie Lake talking about Kanye West. You know Carrie Lake? She ran for governor of Arizona, lost, refused to give it up, and is now the leader of Voice of America. It's a broadcast, like a state-run broadcast. Basically, she's a state propagandist for the United States. Yeah, well, she had a conversation with somebody about Kanye West.
I don't know enough about him to even throw a word out. I mean, rapper.
Really? You don't know anything about Kanye West? Nothing? All you know about him is rapper? Okay. We'll see how that holds up as we go.
I did buy his Christian album, though, and I thought
Jesus is King.
Yeah, I thought that was really impressive. I wanted to support that when he said he was going to do rap music that preached the word of the Lord. I thought that's worthy of my hard-earned money. And
Okay, interesting. So you were aware that he released an album about Jesus, but at the exact same time that was happening, that he released that album, you are unaware that he professed his love for Hitler? I mean, that's kind of a defining quality of the guy, right?
I mean, just because you're in love with the design, you're a designer. Can we just kind of say, like, you like the uniforms, but that's about it?
There's a lot of things that I love about Hitler. A lot of things.
I mean, it doesn't get any more clear than that.
I think it's awesome for a presidential campaign.
Yeah?
To have someone that's honest, that understands the state of the world, and that's ready to listen to what the American people need.
But Hitler's got a pretty bad reputation.
Well, who made that reputation? That was made by Jewish people.
Well, the murdering Jews was a pretty big part of his bad reputation.
Yeah, but some of it's incorrect.
No, it's not. This is who Carrie Lake is promoting.
Also, the Holocaust is not the only Holocaust. So for them to take that and claim, we have abortion right now.
Oh my God. Anyway, the point is, that's what Kanye West is famous for, saying he loves Hitler. You're telling me that all you know about him is that he's a rapper? I mean, I know more, actually, that he also released a Christian album. Doesn't stop there.
Hard-earned money, and I bought that.
I love it. I
think everyone, even people, when we make mistakes.
Oh, so you know that he made a mistake, is what you're saying. I thought you didn't know anything about him. What mistake did he make, Carrie Lake? She's aware that he, quote-unquote, made a mistake, except he doesn't view it as a mistake. To this day, today, he's tweeting about how he's a Nazi. He's wearing a swastika. Even worse than that, he bought a Super Bowl ad for like $12 million or something like that, but he's got it. Here you go. Super Bowl ad.
So what's up, guys? I spent like all the money for the commercial on these new teeth. So once again, I had to shoot it on the iPhone. Go to Yeezy.com.
You want to know what happens when you went to Yeezy.com? He's selling t-shirts with swastikas on them. You know, it's too risky to pull this up on stream. Let me just... So the Super Bowl runs an ad for his store, Yeezy, where he was selling swastika shirts. And Shopify, who he uses, like the platform he used to like sell this stuff, shut down his account because they don't want to be associated with all that. And now he's got Yeezy stores coming soon up. So one more time, Carrie Lake, what mistake did he make exactly? Because he doesn't think he's made any mistakes. You forgive mistakes, but I imagine as a Christian, only when they acknowledge it, right?
Love it. I love it.
I think everyone, even people, when we make mistakes, we're all redeemable. And I really respected when he was willing to show up during President Trump's first term, show up to the White House. He put his MAGA hat on. That took courage back then, especially for somebody in Hollywood. You know how hard that was? So I actually respected that. I respected that a lot about him.
Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting human being, Carrie Lake is, to say some shit like that. To forgive a mistake that the dude doesn't even view as a mistake, which is to say loving Hitler. What is wrong with you, Carrie Lake? He is literally basing his policy positions on Hitler's policies, right? Like Nick Fuentes said, the point is, we are going down a dark Nazi rabbit hole right now, guys. What is happening? It's even making the Nazis uncomfortable.
I think Trump's going to run in 28. He goes, we want Trump. And then he throws up a straight up.
Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. Absolutely wild.
That's all I've got for you. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to check me out on Patreon. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.